Welcome to the Mega Blast Podcast. I'm your host, Jason McDonald. My goal is to get to the truth through conversation. The Mega Blast Podcast is produced by Arts and Opinion, an online journal housed at the Archives of Canada. Visit us at artsandopinion.com. I hope you enjoy today's guest. Welcome back, Chris Berry. How you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you very much, sir. Jason, pleasure to be here.
As always. So I'm back with Chris Berry, who was on the podcast last year, I believe. We had a wonderful time. I re-listened to that, and you're a very good storyteller.
Thank you very much.
So I want... Go ahead.
No, nothing. I just, I can't really take compliments well. I'm just too modest.
Too modest. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Sounds right. So today we're going to do something new. We're going to continue on with your life because your life is really so interesting. I'm also here with my producer, Rob Lewis. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Very good. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Go ahead.
Special occasion.
Yeah, it's definitely a special occasion.
Get together with an old friend.
Especially for your listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure the hundreds or dozens who might be out there.
But you forgot to mention that I am the distinguished editor of Arts and Opinion.
I was just going to get to that. That's right. So Rob is a friend. He's also the producer of the Mega Blast podcast through Arts and Opinion. So all of you can go Google Arts and Opinion and go read the really interesting articles that Chris also writes on.
Yes, Chris has contributed many an article to Arts and Opinion.
So that's how this all came about. So I wanted to continue with what we talked about last time. And I made a few notes, and Rob also, sometimes when we talk, he's like, telling me all these things you've told him. So maybe we can hit into some of those.
So I've been called out of my bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. This doesn't jive. You're a fucking liar.
Well, we want it on the record. We want to catch you in one of your lies, right? Okay. One of the things I noted down was we talked about your Woody Allen experience, right? Where you were in Hannah and Her Sisters was the film, right? Just to recap that, Chris Berry was in a Woody Allen movie. You reminded me that it was an multi-Academy Award winning. Right.
I did not get one of those awards.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't even put us on the soundtrack.
Yeah. So if any of you have, want to see that film, you can see Chris for a brief period in the punk club, and Woody Allen's there with Diane Keaton.
Diane Wiest at CBGB's.
CBGB's, the famous punk club in New York, country bluegrass. What is it? CBGB's, whatever. But I wonder, did you ever meet Woody Allen?
Yes, I did, actually.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Just because that's really amazing.
Well, I mean, it's something really that exciting. I mean, I was naive enough on set like that to go up to him. He was, when I came into CB's for the set, he was actually at the doorway. And they looked at me like, oh, okay, I see who this one is, right? And, and I don't know, he said, thanks for the gig, whatever, it's a pleasure to meet you. I love all your movies, especially the earlier funny ones.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, I guess by that point.
The Orgasmatron?
That was
84,
right? 84
yeah.
That's when it was shot. It came out in 86, yeah.
Okay.
So, and he was actually quite gracious, quite courteous. On the set, of course, we're getting direction from him. But I mean, that's, going through AD, of course. So he'd, and then the AD would look at me, say, okay, you, singer, take that coat off. It's not working with the camera.
Okay.
Or whatever.
So he doesn't give the directions directly
Most
to
directors
They don't.
Well, I mean, unless they're dealing, with basically, highfalutin extras, such as basically what we were, right? We're just a band. We played our own songs, so that's pretty good, and that's the gift that keeps on giving. Still get checks for that.
That's pretty cool.
But, I mean, whatever. But I've never been shy about that, right? Like, Rob and I have worked on many films together as, and we're paired with some celebrity, and Like I was in that movie. I'm Not There. That's what made me think about it. I'm Not There. It's a Bob Dylan biopic, and there's a scene with the dead guy.
I was in a scene with Kate Blanchett on that one.
On that one?
I said, yeah.
Okay.
I'm Not There, yeah.
So this is Heath Ledger, right? That's the guy playing.
He was the one who OD'd on antidepressants. He had like a
I don't know.
Ledger.
I don't know.
He had a tragic mixture of different antidepressants and alcohol and died about 20 years ago or something like that. Anyway, I guess that was before.
Yeah, the guy. Yeah, he was in that.
He was the Batman. Brokeback Mountain. He was in Batman.
Yeah. So that guy.
Yeah.
So it's just as an example, and so there's a scene in that film where. I'm the what do you call it? With the clapper in front of the. I know that I'm just blanking on it now, but basically, they turn around like set, boom, and I click the thing and step back, and then he does his. They're doing Positively 4th Street, right? That famous Bob Dylan scene clip from 64, 65, I guess, where he's like, I don't need a weatherman. Don't trade the wind.
Oh, yeah.
So they're emulating that thing, and I'm what do you call it? I don't know, blanking.
To describe it, it's when a film is about to shoot. There's a guy with a thing that snaps shut.
It has the scene, the set. Is it shot? I know the word for that. That thing. There's a word.
I'm sure there's some technical term for it. Right?
Everybody and who's listening to
is going to go. Yeah, those idiots don't know that.
That's it. And we all know it too, but I just find.
Yeah, so you played the guy who snaps the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
But basically, so we were stuck on that fucking scene for like 3-4 hours, and late October in Montreal, night by a fountain. It was cold, So anyway, but we just just hanging there, and as an extra, right? You're not supposed to talk to the stars, and I can appreciate that too, actually. But it's like, no, give me a fucking break. You know what I mean?
One of my heroes.
And so I never really paid attention to that. So like, if I'm on a set with somebody and we're standing side by side, I'm gonna have conversation. But so I've always done that. So
this raises an interesting thing just about show business. That when we watch movies and TV shows, it kind of you have this impression that people are walking through it. But when you're actually on a set, it takes hours to do some basic thing that would be 5 seconds of screen time. People don't understand how boring those sets can be. Rob, you've talked about this.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Well, to get back to our first meeting each other and our first experience, we were on the set for 9 days for the X-Men. Yeah. Remember, 9 consecutive days? Yeah. There was about maybe 200 or 300 extras.
Yeah.
Not 1 second of that appeared in the film.
Wow.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, 1 second. Really? Because I heard that you see me in that. So I was the bartender in one of those scenes.
Really?
So, anybody listening, when you're watching X-Men 1, Chris Berry is the bartender.
No, I was in all those fucking movies. I was in another one where it was a featured extra. Somebody was with super X-ray vision or something is looking at is looking through buildings or whatever, and I'm in there and I'm having a fight with my girlfriend, I guess, who was like 3 or 4 feet taller than me. We're fighting it out, but anyways, whatever. But no, I haven't seen it, and what was that? Apocalypse.
Yeah,
I can't believe I even remember. I remember the names of any other ones.
Just as a side note, Martin Scorsese. This is something I watched.
Oh yeah, did I tell you that?
Yeah, well, no. But Martin Scorsese. This brings up something that I know that I wanted to get to.
Because that I was on The Aviator too. You can see me in The Aviator.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
My glamorous career.
Was that in Centerville? In Centerville?
No, that was shot. That scene was shot in a warehouse.
Okay.
I think around here at Point St. Charles.
Because my friend Graham Ford, shout out to Graham Ford, he has a friend who is the owner of the big mansion in Centerville where they shot.
Yes, I know that place.
Right, yeah, maybe you were there. No. Because I remember, so those of you who've seen the film, you remember this beautiful property with a veranda and stuff, and that's his property. But
this is my first day of shooting on that set. And it was the first day of shooting. And it was the first time I ever, decided, well, okay, I'm in the union, right? So I can make pretty good money as an extra, and I always needed money, we have habits to support, and lifestyles to live. So it was the first time I'd ever done it. And I had to get a haircut for the gig, but they paid you more for that. And I was thinking, okay, well, this would be kind of cool. I'll get like a 1920s cut. How bad can it be? And actually, it was a pretty good cut.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so it was the first time on, and these sets, you got to be there at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and that's or whatever, 6 in the morning. It's all the same. It's like the break, ungodly hour. It used to be waking up at. And so so we're rehearsing. It was the first scene. I was in the first scene of the first day of shooting.
This is the Aviator, right?
The Aviator,
yeah. Right.
And so it's a scene in it's in an airplane hangar, and Leonardo DiCaprio comes around. He's inspecting everything. He's going, these rivets aren't riveted right, or whatever. The wrong size rivets. And who's doing this? And my role was mechanic number 2. That was my official role, mechanic number 2.
Was that your credit at the end? Mechanic number 2, Chris Barrett? Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't look for it. Yeah. In fact, I've only seen half the movie.
Okay.
But so they're rehearsing the scene before they shoot it, and all I'm doing is just standing there. Oh, and when Howard Hughes is going, I'm like, this is poorly constructed or whatever. As mechanic number 2, I'm as upset as mechanic number 1, who's beside me. We're shaking our heads. Oh, that fucking Howard Hughes. Oh, he really gives us the going over, doesn't he? That kind of thing.
Did you speak? Because apparently you get a lot more money if you
no, I wish I'd spoken.
Yeah. No, so you're just standing there with your arms crossed, shaking your head, going, that fucking
thing. Yeah. But it was like, it was like they were shooting that scene at like 7 in the morning or something. So I still half asleep. So, while they're, basically, what am I? I'm just background furniture, right? So I just sitting there, and then all of a sudden, I see Martin Scorsese looking over at me. They've done a rehearsal. They've done a rehearsal.
Right.
DiCaprio's done, come on, done his thing. We know what's going to happen. They know how they're going to shoot it, camera angles, all that stuff. They've blocked the shot and so on and so forth. And I see Martin Scorsese look at me, and then I see the AD going, "Hey, you, mechanic number 2, look alive! You look like you're asleep there. Are you high?" Well, maybe. yeah. So that was my.
You really want to know the answer to that question?
And the third AD who was in charge of the actors was such a fucking bitch. She looked a bit like a pig, really. She had like pig nose. You probably know her, Rob. You probably worked with her before. And she like, and what am I? I'm just a fucking regular bozo, just doing this gig, counting the hours, going, hour 16. That I'm up to like $800. And and she goes, you think you're so cool. What am I fucking doing? I just sort of sitting in the extra room with everybody else. Anyways, whatever. It was, but at the end of the day, I was supposed to be a 2-day shoot, only did the 1 day, which lasted forever. And, I walked away with almost $1,000.
Nice.
Like, whenever that was shot, like in, 2001.
It's about 20 years. I wanted to just, the reason I mentioned Scorsese is that he has gone on the record that these X-Men and whatever Marvel movies are destroying cinema, right?
Well, I agree
with him. I do too. I can't, one of my projects for my students is to present a film or a TV series, and I tell them right off the bat, I'm like, no Marvel universe. If you're not going to present those movies I think they're terrible, they're formulaic, they're awful, but I wanted to ask you, this came up in the last discussion we had about authenticity. You talked a lot about how you couldn't imagine yourself writing some sappy song and singing it. You could imagine writing it for somebody else.
Sure.
So, is there a tension between authenticity and art, and are you ambivalent about that? Because you did want to be famous, right? I don't know.
Well, no, as we discussed last time, sure, of course, I wanted the hits, and absolutely, but not at. Not some.
This is as a musician, just to be
clear.
Yeah. People listening understand. Not as an actor. We were talking about movies a second ago.
I'll never be a reality TV star. Fame for fame's
But you wanted to be
a wasted pursuit.
You wanted to be famous as a pop or punk rock singer, rock and roll, right?
Yeah, famous isn't really so much the.
Chris wanted to share his art with the world.
Well, no, I just I
raise it up
to attribute the highest.
Well, that's it. That's true. It's passionate about rock and roll. and it had kind of sucked, and it really
throughout the 70s, yeah.
Well, and by the 80s, when I was really going, because I started with the 222s in '78, right? But I didn't really get going till the '80s, and I was like, in my 20s,
right?
But so to me, the important thing was getting. It had to be good, It's like I don't know.
When you say good, you mean authentic in a certain.
Well, I don't know,
right?
Yeah, sure.
Because there must be a lot of pop hits that are good. I mean, they're well written, they're well played, But you would listen, like we talked about Loverboy. Is Loverboy, that was sort of the archetypal example of a crappy band, but they must have been good musicians, right?
So
I mean, no, I'm not trying. I'm just saying, like, there's something about the authenticity.
Yeah,
right?
Sure. It's because it's all spirit, right? It's all like it's all what you can emote. It's all communicating with the listener, whether it be on record or live performance or whatever. It's all about communication, and I think there's a certain spirit you fucking get on it, hopefully, and other people that are on that same fucking tune, that same vibration, hear it and go, yeah, I understand, I appreciate that, and it's real to me because it is. And if it's not, it's just bullshit, really. If you're not doing that, then it's like, then who fucking cares about the craftsmanship?
Well, people buy that stuff, right?
Well, yeah, sure, but I mean,
Let me ask you this,
but that doesn't mean anything.
No, for sure.
Unless you're one of the rare beasts like the Beatles or somebody who
okay,
turn around.
That's what I want to ask you. Like, who are the groups that are massively popular that are authentic? The Beatles, the Rolling Stones. I mean,
the Rolling Stones, 50 years ago.
Okay,
I don't. What you got now is not. I guess it's authentically the Rolling Stones. But I mean, they haven't been real for years.
But I'm just wondering because the Beatles were authentic, and I think the Stones, at least they were.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm
not questioning what you're saying because I think I agree with it. In fact, I totally agree with authenticity.
Yeah, and the Rolling Stones, I would be less harsh if they had all died in a plane crash in say 75. I'd be 77. I'll give them some girls too. But it's just sort of like, it's hard for me to look at Mick Jagger in 64 now, knowing what, you know what I mean? Like 64.
He just turned 80.
He was fantastic.
Yeah, he just turned 80.
Yeah, I know.
Literally. Yeah.
I'm watching him doing his fucking aerobic exercises in a stadium somewhere. I saw him in 89. I got tickets.
I saw that tour. Yeah.
The Steel Wheels.
Yeah, in Toronto, yeah.
I didn't have a lot of interest in it because that's like, it's the Rolling Stones. I mean, I loved the Rolling Stones as a child. I loved them, right? I mean, I had, them on my posters on my wall, the Rolling Stones, and other men in makeup, which concerned my parents, who were as liberal as parents are today. And, the tickets.
How did you feel about that show? Was it authentic to you, or do you think by that time they had? Yeah.
I got the tickets. We were on Polygram at that time, so Polygram gave me tickets. I don't know how they had them, but they did, and they were pretty good tickets too.
Up near the front.
Well, up near the front, it's relevant with the Olympic Stadium, right? But I just remember it was like family hour. There was nothing subversive about it whatsoever. And part of the beauty of rock and roll to me is this
subversion.
Yes. And I just, I think I left. Like, I didn't even stay through the whole thing. I've been watching it and going, hearing 2,000 Light Years from Home, and going, that's a good song. I should go home and listen to it.
Right.
I should listen to the real thing, not this.
I bought tickets off a scalper outside the Sky Dome in Toronto. I was about 18, and it was extremely cold. It was like -20 or something. So I went in there, and there was like a couple who were older, maybe in their 30s, who were really rocking out to it, and they were smoking reefer. So I said, hey, can I have a toke? And they just said, they didn't want me to bother them, so they gave me a joint, right? They're like, here, just take the joint, just shut up, you kid, And I remember having a good time and enjoying it, but I don't know, I didn't have nearly as much. I didn't see David Bowie in 1972, you know what I mean? So, if I'd seen the Rolling Stones in 1967, it might have been different, right?
I was there at the set show in 72 at the Forum.
Really? It was riot? Was that the big riot?
Well, it was. Yes, I guess it would have been a riot, but their sound truck had been blown up the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And there was all this
famous case, yeah.
I was only 10 years old, or maybe even, I guess
what
I
were
was
you doing
10.
there?
I was 10. Well, I used to go downtown, right? I would live in Eddie G, took a 105 bus, and I'd be at Atwater. And Atwater in the Forum, that was downtown to me. And Cabot Square, where all the hippies and stuff were hanging around. And I knew the Rolling Stones were in there. And I remember, maybe I'll meet fucking Keith Richards.
This is amazing.
Hanging outside.
10-year-old Chris Berry goes down to the Montreal Forum in 1972.
Well, and I really wanted to go. I really wanted to go. I mean, I loved the Rolling Stones when I was like 9, 10 years old. And, it's 72. Exile on Main Street just came out. I couldn't afford the album, but I had the Thumping Dice single.
Yeah.
With Sweet Black Angel on the beat.
So you just went to hang out, outside the show?
Well, I was kind of hoping I could get in.
Right.
And, I had pretty restrictive parents, Not parents. My father didn't really pay much attention, but my mother was like, little boys don't go down to see the Rolling Stones. They're drugs and sex and all the things the little boys are interested in. So, but
your father was
I was allowed to go. They said, well, if you can find a friend who'll go with you, you can go see the Rolling Stones if you can get tickets.
Right.
And there were tickets available.
Okay.
There were tickets available outside. Because I was in Cabot Square. I said, tickets, B8, Rolling Stones, So, and so there was only one kid at school who, and it was summer, right? And all the kids I went to school with, they all mostly came from well-off families and stuff, so they would go to camp and things like that. So summer was a pretty lonely period of time for me. But there was one kid who also was interested in music, although he had shitty taste. But he was also interested in music. Tom Allen, who later he's a jazz musician, and he hosts CBC, some CBC radio.
Oh, okay.
And he's done. I don't know, whatever. I don't know what's going on. But
so shout out to Tom Allen if he's listening.
Yeah, it was my friend.
From
Elizabeth Ballantyne Elementary.
So you were hanging out with him outside the Forum.
No, he didn't want. He was the one. It was my one hope, and I called him.
Oh no,
and he wasn't really some kid who I'd hang out with normally, but I knew that. Well, he might go. He might be able to go. It was the same thing with the New York Dolls later. I really had trouble finding, when I was 12, I really had trouble finding anyone who wanted to go to that either.
Most 10-year-old kids are not like, let's go to the Forum. Like, you're unusual.
Well, I thought it was great.
Well,
I guess so. I didn't see too many of the children. But it was great. I was hanging out there. And of course, I guess because, this cute little kid, what's he doing there? Everybody's getting high and stuff. And getting stoked for the Stones in 1972, when they were still, pretty good. But in the end,
I didn't get the tickets.
I couldn't get the tickets, and
But you were there. That's pretty cool.
I was there until about 7:00 at night or 6. I guess I had to be home for supper. So,
okay.
But I hung out that afternoon, and I was so upset. I was so upset. And the next day, in the Montreal Gazette or the Star, it was very, very hot that night when they played here. Like it was in July. I think it was July 12th. How I know that, I don't know. It's probably wrong, but
we can check that.
But yes, you can
check it on Wikipedia. They have all the Rolling Stone tours.
But it was super hot, and the next day in the paper, I know since the Gazette of the Star, it's obviously a big event. Rolling Stones in town. They're showing pictures of the audience, and there's all these chicks without their shirts on, with their tits out, and I'm thinking.
Why wasn't I in there?
This is just wrong. Could I miss that? That would have been amazing. Imagine if that broad was sitting up the aisle from me. My fucking 10-year-old boner would be fucking raging.
You're 62-year-old. You might have a boner too if you're sitting next to it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I tell you, I'm just as interested in boobs now as I was when I was 12. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose.
And Rob, you're a bit older. I'm sure you you're a man. You look at women, and I don't think it really
happens. Yes, it happens. Yeah.
I was hypersexualized though.
Yeah.
As a kid, I remember having bondage fantasies in kindergarten. Where does that come from? Where does a fucking 4-year-old have these BDSM fantasies about all of his female classmates? All of them, except for maybe one or two.
That's wild.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
It's a great question. Really good question.
Where does a kid know that?
I can tell you, it was older, but I just want to, before we end on this authenticity thing, because it's an interesting question. Some people have said that this is a bit of a risky thing because it moves into politics a bit, but some people have said that Donald Trump is a punk rock president.
Funny,
He's him. He's him with his big stupid garish tie, and he doesn't care what people think about him.
It's funny. I haven't
what
heard
do you think about
say
that?
I haven't heard other people say that, but I have thought that.
Oh yeah,
and
okay.
It's a
thing. It's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of true,
and it's the authenticity, isn't it? Right? It's just like,
well, I
mean, is he authentic, or maybe he's not? Is it just a shock the way he doesn't care that he shocks people? Or
I think he's just fucking horrible. I mean, I detest the man. I don't think I've ever hated anyone who I've never met.
But is he authentic? Is he punk rock?
I don't know. I'd have to meet him. Yeah. But I mean, there is something kind of punk.
I'll answer that. I think Trump is the least edited president in the history of presidents.
So
least edited.
Yeah.
So you mean when he talks?
The most himself, yeah.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
he doesn't seem to care if people say, oh, this is a lie. He just says what he says, and he's very... Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that he's good or bad. I'm not making a case one way or the other.
I would agree in some ways. He's punk rock, but he's also the antithesis as well. I mean, he's an anti-hero, really, right?
So he's a tragic figure in some ways. Victor Davis Hanson is a great historian, talks about him compares him in the Western movies, the way that a guy would come into town to clean things up. There's like this law and order, and they're trying to get this guy, so this guy comes in and breaks all the laws to go and kill the bandit. Yeah. But then once he's done, everybody drives him out of town at the end of the movie. That's a thing in a lot of Western movies.
Well, at least that guy accomplished something.
Right, well, yeah. No, but I mean, we could get into a long discussion. Maybe he has accomplished some things. I mean, I could probably name some things, but...
And I bet you I could argue why they were fucking stupid.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole other discussion. I mean, there's no question that Trump has had an impact.
Oh,
I think that's fair to say. Sure. Right? You could argue they're bad impacts or good impacts.
Well, that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah. but he's definitely, like, if you compare him to the current U.S. president, whatever impact Joe Biden is having, it's probably not so much him as all the people behind him. Whereas with Trump, I get the impression it was him. He was the one saying those things and doing those things.
Well, now, nobody was...
that may be a bad thing. I
think people did put things in his mouth or ideas in his head. But I mean, those gems that came out of that fucking idiot's mouth, or to continue to come out of his mouth, are, that's pure id, isn't it?
I think so. I think that's another way. So is that maybe the authenticity in the punk rock is also, it's id. It's right. I mean, is that another way to think about it?
I guess it's the whole concept of like punk rock. Wow,
we talked about that.
Anyway?
What is punk rock?
Exactly.
I'm fascinated with this question.
I mean, it's
and you were a punk rocker, so your views on this.
So I'm told. I'm told. But it was like it's a classification of a type of music, but it's really more an attitude, right? And the attitude. You could argue at the extremes. You could turn around and say Donald Trump's kind of punk because he offends a lot of people and, creates a stir. But it's where Trump is a force for evil, for bad.
So
where
punk is
ultimately is moralistic, really.
So it's a force for good.
That's such a generalization.
So it's supposed to be.
Sex Pistols and the Clash lyrically are a million,
right.
And the Ramones a million, light years, and it's all different things that got labeled punk rock.
But you're saying it should be a force for advancing us.
Everything
in a good
should
way,
be
right, and then punk rock should be shaking things up for the better.
Yes, of
course.
Is
that one way to think about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, listen, I became conscious in the 60s, right? I mean, I was, raised on media, basically, television and Mad Magazine.
Watching the Beatles. That was one of your first memories that you recounted in the other.
Beatles cartoon.
Yeah. That inspired you, yeah.
I was too young in 64 to see that.
But you were conscious in the 60s and
yeah. So, in Mad Magazine, National Lampoon, and I came of age, sort of became a teenager in the 70s. There's a high hopes for the culture at that point, hippies and like sort of a counterculture. And my 8, 9-year-old's brain figured that youth should be counterculture. It should be threatening to the grown-ups, to the teachers, to the parents. It's like, shake things up because it kind of sucks. And even as a child, you kind of knew that. And it was just sort of like, it's why, you like the Stones more than the Beatles, let's say, or whatever. Although that wasn't really, I loved them both, but, so by the time, when I was 16, right, with 222s in the late 70s, naively, I wanted to change the cultural landscape for the better. And I mean, that was really.
I don't think it's naive at all.
It didn't happen.
Did. I think you did.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Because the 222s were a thing and Station 10 was a thing. I also, I agree with you. I'm a Stones fan for that reason. When my first concert was The Clash in 1984, I was 12. Mm-hmm. So I think that you and I probably have a very similar sensibility, except you were much more successful at, expressing it out of the world than I was. But the final thing I'd say about that is Johnny Rotten from John Lydon?
Yeah.
He has gone on record about this, about how it's a very strange time where right-wing people are the countercultural people now. Yeah. Right? He's actually pointed this out because you see that one way to measure this is who's in favor of free speech are the underdogs. Because the people who are pushed down, they want to be able to express their views. And it used to be, it was always a left-wing thing. Remember, free speech was Ice-T with all this stuff about free speech and the moral majority. Now it's all these right-wing haters that are arguing for free speech, and the left-wing people are trying to. They're the moralists.
Yeah, right? I mean it's obviously it's a complex, multifaceted issue. I would argue. I don't know what I'd argue.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that. You don't have to comment on it.
No, I know. I just.
But John Lydon,
my brain went off somewhere else, and I don't remember what we were talking about.
It's authenticity and punk rock and all that kind of stuff, and it seems to me it has shifted. And Donald Trump he's a Republican, and he seems to kind of embody that kind of how the right wing is now that are the disruptors rather than the left wing.
Yeah, he's a Republican, right? Republican in name only. All right, because I mean, he's not your father's Republican. That's
true.
Sure.
That's true.
Yeah, no.
Anyway,
I thought that too. I didn't know other. I mean, in my head,
I heard it once on the radio or something. But okay, did you want to mention anything about this whole authenticity thing and right wing, disruptors and? By the way, one of my punk rock expressions of this was the original name of this podcast was Right Wing Haters and Company, which was portmanteau, I think is the word. Right-wing haters mixed with Writers and Company, which is a snobby, sucky show on CBC, which you may be aware of. And I wanted to put them CBC, together, I'm sure. Right? And I knew it would be disruptive because I can't stand the CBC anymore. I'm so sick of it, And sanctimonious left-wing,
Right. And it's terrible, right? Because CBC is supposed to be, a crown corporation at arm's length from the government of the day. That's how it's set up. And I think a public broadcaster, even in the 21st century, is a good thing for this country and most countries, if not all countries.
But I think it's strayed from. Well, that.
It's funny, because it's it's a Trudeau woke crowd that's even though they're not supposed to, even though they're supposed to stay away from it, that is sort of, set the tone of it. And it's, and I still wake up in the morning and sort of have a sense of duty.
Put on CBC?
Well, no, I go to their website.
Okay.
And it's so shitty. And it's I
love that as a sense of duty. You're being a good Canadian.
Because where are you getting Canadian news, right?
Yeah.
Was that what Global
but you've lost. I was a
CJD.
Yeah, I was an avid listener of the CBC, and I followed their stuff. And I can't figure out. I think it's actually gotten worse.
It's gotten way worse. It's unfucking bearable.
Okay, so I'm not crazy. It's not just me that's turned into a right wing hater. It's
and I mean, and I think that in general, I think it's quite bad. I think it's pendulum swings, right? I mean, look at the reaction to having fucking Obama, the whitest black guy you're ever gonna find in the office, and how upset that's made the Trump people, even though they want to cop to it. That it was, because God forbid a black man in as a president. So, I mean, the pendulum swings, and I know so many people like me, that are like, lifelong, liberals, for lack of a better word, socially progressive, don't hate people, live and let live, you're a faggot, that's fine, you're whatever, it's all good.
Freedom. It's all about freedom, right?
Say,
yeah, I mean, we all agree with all three of us.
Social contract.
You want to be gay, you want to have friends who are different races, I don't care. Just you do you, I do me, and we all just get along.
That's
right?
It. Been like
that's my philosophy. That has not changed throughout my life.
No, not at all. It's like, I mean,
I think it probably has for you too, Rob. Right?
But I mean, because in this whole fucking woke thing, it's like, and I hate to. It sounds like I'm taking Republican talking points, talking the war on woke.
Be a right-wing hater, Chris. Come on, red pill.
But I mean, they alienated. I think by being so over the top of this didactic fucking. I don't want to even call it left-wing ideology.
It's very moralistic.
Really, I mean, I've been.
It's very moralistic. It's very moralistic in that it wants to tell people how to live their lives based on whatever their racial characteristics are.
It's so stupid. It's like, it's not the word. It's like, the N-word. To me, that's ridiculous. It's how you say the N-word.
Yeah.
It's like how you,
context.
Yes, right? Of course. Context, right. And like Lenny Bruce, did you come good? It's like, that's an old Lenny Bruce routine, but Butcher's basically saying the same thing. It's just, but it's like, it's just so... It's for people that aren't able to think for themselves.
That's right.
You need the dogma, and this is what you follow. And anyone who's sort of outside of that, you can't understand because it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's nuance. Oh, don't throw nuance at me, And so it's like this fallback, and you're a fucking asshole.
It's an algorithm.
You're a racist.
It's an algorithm. It's an easy way of categorizing the world without having to think for yourself.
Yes.
Right. Is what you're saying.
That's it.
I think. Right.
And people buy into it, and of course, social media has encouraged it.
Yeah. I'm pushing back against it. In my classes and everything, I'm like, this class is a free speech safe space, okay? You can say what you want to say, and if somebody says something that offends you, that's, I mean, if they insult you, that's one thing. But if they just say something and you are upset by it, learn to just go, okay, that's a different point of view. That's a different way of seeing the world. And sometimes I'm upset by things that other people say, and maybe you will be. And
Yeah,
right?
I agree in principle. I mean, there's limits to all
of course,
right?
It's like I tell them, don't try to. Exactly.
Real hate speech is real hate speech, and that's
of course.
offensive. I don't think it should be outlawed, but it's offensive. Libelous or slander or outright lies.
That's a different thing. Yeah.
That's
irresponsible. You're a writer, so you
I know all about lying. So
okay, so that was a bit of a diversion and deviation into politics. I didn't apologize.
I can talk about politics endlessly.
Yeah.
So.
Before I want to get to speak. You're talking about your writing a little bit. I want to move to that as we go toward closing a little bit later, but. You mentioned when I was re-listening that you got to know Johnny Thunder of the New York Dolls, and we never explored that because I love Johnny Thunder and I love the Dolls, and I know he died young of a heroin overdose. And could you just talk a little bit about him? And
well, it's not like Johnny Thunder and I were like best buds, right? It's like basically,
but he's a legend. I mean, Johnny Thunder, in my view.
No? Yeah. Oh, sure. No? An icon. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
How'd you meet him?
That's a good question. We played with him at least once, but I just knew him from the East Village. Like know, well, I guess I don't know if this is the first time I met him. I have a feeling we probably met earlier before this, but I do remember doing a gig with him, supporting him at. Oh, this is the story here at the Cat Club, which was sort of kind of a hip venue in New York for a couple of years, although it was never very hip, but. Whatever, that was his rep.
Where was it in New York? In Manhattan, obviously.
But 12th Street, I think.
Okay. And this is the 80s we're talking about?
This is the late 80s, and I think it was still going in. Yeah, it was still going in the
throughout the 90s. Okay.
Not throughout the 90s, but
early.
Yeah, it was.
So it was a club where punk bands and other
lots of bands played.
Right.
Lots
of
bands played.
Right. And so you played there.
They had more shitty Bon Jovi type bands than good bands, but.
But they had Johnny Thunder playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Johnny Thunder's, it was part of one of the big festivals, New Music or CMJ or one of the, anyways, whatever. It was a big thing. And this is a long story. I don't know why. This is the background here, but this was, we had a whole bunch of record labels that had all chased us for a while. We ended up signing with Polygram, which was a big mistake. And I knew it, and I wanted to go with Chrysalis anyways. Or no, I wanted to go with Columbia. The guy at Columbia had like worked for the MC5. We were totally on the same level. Okay. He is an ex-junkie. We had a lot of things we could talk about. And
so why'd you go with Polygram?
And he signed Leonard Cohen. He signed Kate Bush. Okay. You know, he had some real class acts, but he also like signed Brittany Fox or these other hair bands too, because they sold records. He had to keep his job because Leonard Cohen at that time I think wasn't making money, and neither was Kate Bush in America at least was. Anyway, whatever.
So why'd you go with Polygram? You said
it's a long story. The Polygram really sold us a bill of goods. It's a long story. Okay. I didn't want to do it, but I listened to our management, and our management thought it was the thing to do, and that's why you have management, right?
They're supposed to be the experts.
It could have been worse with Columbia. Right. They could have, just shelved us or whatever.
So you signed with Polygram.
Yeah. So, and then Polygram dropped us 18 months later, without even releasing a record, and I knew like a few months into it that it wasn't going to work out, which I knew before we even signed with them. We got a bit of money, but we also didn't get much else. So there'd been a big bidding war for us before that, but now this is 18 months later, and Polygram wouldn't let us out just to be shitty. They knew they didn't want us. We had an out, but they made us wait out that period, which was probably forced into the contract by our lawyer, but I don't know. Anyways, so now we're stuck.
What didn't Polygram like about you guys? What turned them off to you? Your music, your personalities?
I think a bit of everything, yeah. I don't know if they,
Maybe
a bit of everything.
Group behavior?
No, not really. I don't think they knew us well. I don't know. We went to we recorded at the record plant
in New York.
With on their dime, and Joey Ramone was going to come by.
Oh yeah,
Joey Ramone was going to come sing on a song called "When in Rome," and he called up that day and said, "I can't do it." It was a disappointment. But at that time, Joey Ramone was like, he wasn't having Joey Ramone on a record, and this was like 89 or something.
Nobody cared about the Ramones. Yeah. By the late 80s,
but whatever. So Joey Ramone singing background vocals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he called up and said, "No, we're doing a video shoot today," and that was the only day. But if they want to come, they can be in the video, Pet Sematary video. And I thought that would be kind of fun. Chris Dine and Debby Harry, Cheetah Chrome, a lot of people that I knew were in that video. The Psycho Sluts, we had the same management as them. So we,
it's a good name, Psycho Sluts.
Yeah. Psycho
Sluts. Almost as good as Jane Mansfield's head.
So anyway,
his right leg.
So you went to go appear in the video. Right.
Well, in the end, I mean, we had time booked at the record plan at like $3 billion an hour. Right. So even though it was Polygram's money, it would ultimately come out of us. It's like we weren't taking the day off the studio just to be in some other band's video. That's as background furniture, man. So every time I see that video, because I like the song and I do see the video, I was like,
damn, I could have been in that.
I could have been, but instead I just made a record that never got released.
How does this connect to Johnny Thunder?
Oh yeah.
Right, yeah.
How does that connect to Johnny? Oh yeah, right. So now after that period of time, now it's 18 months later. That's a long time in the music industry. And we don't have a million labels that are chasing us. Only one label is still interested in us, Chrysalis. But people kind of remembered, that's the band. There was a big buzz about going on. They're free and clear now. They're not with Polygram. So, the place was packed. It was full of industry. And so this is our big night. This is our big thing. It's like, okay, we'll finally get a proper record deal, and lots of people were there to see us. And we're supporting Thunders. So, like, lots of other musicians were there,
This is to opening for Johnny Thunder at the club
at the
name,
Cat Club.
At the Cat Club, right.
In
good,
I don't know what year, 89, maybe 88.
12th Street, New York City, big event, right? 13, Johnny Thunder's the headliner. You're opening, and there's A&R guys in the cinema in the audience, right?
It's a big gig. And the A&R guys are not there for Johnny Thunder.
Right. He's already got his contract.
And they'd all been invited, and we had a rep, right? So we go on there, and of course, we're all, except for me, actually, everybody's high off their fucking minds, right? Which is not a good time to be high, and they're high on fucking uppers, like meth and coke. Right. So it's like, those are not good performance drugs, right? I mean, not for me, at least. I used to take speed sometimes, and like on the tour, I'd be really tired, and it's like, okay, I take acid sometimes because let's see what happens, But for performance, you live and learn, and I'd already learned that, but the rest of the band didn't. So we always came on like we're big stars, right? So we had the roadies; they would set everything up and they'd be on tune. So we would come on, and the guitarist Richard, who just died last year, would hit a big note, and then drum up a tune, and then start singing. I start singing, and the song, off we'd go. So everybody's high, and including the roadies, Randy Byro, who ended up with Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, and finally in prison. But whatever, that's a whole other story.
So you're all high on speed, or at least maybe the band. Are they playing ahead of the beat? I mean, right. So they're rushing, and they're high on meth and coke or whatever.
Yeah, and everyone's feeling the pressure. That was the thing with that band, right?
So you're not performing as well as you normally would. Is that fair to say? I'm not
to say
that.
Well, basically what happens is, so we go on. So Richard plays the big note. The other guitarist is going to come in, and it's supposed to be, but his amp is all fucked up. And they both had two amps, a clean sound and a dirty sound. So it's ding, 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 and then nothing. And it's like, we still got this thing going, this is enough. And it's like, and this is our big thing, And the only person, and and it's so loud. And we had Glenn Robinson, who was a very, very successful producer, who was doing our sound for us. And that house guy at the Cat Club kind of took that as a slight. So, okay, you do it. So, and our fucking guys, they always couldn't play loud enough. So we're so loud that that people are all up at front, then by the endless 2-3 minutes it took to figure out, what's going on, we get the amps going properly, there's that's loud. And it's just
is it kind of feedbacky and noise?
Yes, that was the idea. Yeah, okay, but it was only supposed to be for about 20 seconds.
But it's hurting their ears.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. Right, I got you. Yeah.
So we go on, and then finally get together and play, and then of course everyone's out of tune. It's like the bass on this side of the stage, it's like A. On this side of the stage, it's like A flat, and I'm in the middle. So across the stage, like, whoa, what's going on? And the beat is too fast, and you can't sit in it. It's sort of like, oh man, and bless his heart, Ian Asbury from the Cult. It was my friend going back to London, and we toured with them, and and they were big supporters of our band.
He come up and give you a hand.
No, he was up in front. He was just up in the front.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Like dressed out like
that's great. Yeah.
And maybe 2 or 3 other stragglers. But it was just like a disaster.
So musically, it was a disaster.
It was a disaster on every level. Right. It was way too loud. The things, finally he got in tune, but it was just like a thing. And then after, we finished the gig, and
so it didn't get any better as the songs progressed.
Yeah, it got better.
It got better, but
it just
because it opened so bad, it kind of set the tone.
And it just never really came together.
Right.
It was never, and it was still always really loud. So loud, So we'd get applause and stuff like that, but it was not the rousing success that we sort of expected it and certainly wanted it to be. And so Johnny Thunders is on that. So this is a bad night for us. And of course, after the thing, we're used to having tons of people coming backstage and saying, "Oh, how great you are!" Blah 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 blah.
But this time,
I'll give you my jacket and sign with my label, as it happened in the back.
Right. This time, not so many.
It's a very lonely thing. And finally, the A&R guy from Chrysalis comes in, And he goes, oh, it wasn't your best night, but
Right.
you know, some good new material, you know, whatever. So we still ended up negotiating a deal with that. But Thunders is there, and this is I can't help but think that I've met him before that. And I probably have, I'm just not remembering. But Thunders is like, you know, Thunders was fucked up, right? I mean, he was always, certainly when he was playing, it was part of his shtick, but it wasn't charming at all. It's like he was coming to our dressing room.
Fucked up, you mean like just to be clear, you mean stoned on smack, like just like slurring his words.
Smack, yeah.
I've seen videos of him where he's like he's singing too much junkie business, and he's sitting down with like his hand on his arm, like he's shooting up. I mean, he leaned right into the junkie thing.
Right. That's what Walter's song.
Yeah, is that what you're saying? He came back and he's slurring his words.
Well, slurring his words. I mean, that's whatever. What else is new? I mean, I do that too. But no. I mean, he was like kind of pathetic, really.
Okay,
just sort of like coming back. Yeah, anyone got a joint? Yeah, and then falling down on his face, flat down, like in between the two dressing rooms. So you're gonna walk over him. This is he's playing, and his gigs. They had been pretty shitty by that point. So. That's probably the first time I met him, actually. That's probably the first time. And then I would see him all the time. We'd always run into each other, like, downtown.
Okay. Yeah,
so, and I guess, that he had no reason to be nice to me.
Okay, right.
But I think he thought that we knew each other better.
Right. Okay, so he'd come up to you, hey, Chris, how you doing?
Not hey, Chris, but like, hey, how you doing?
Right, he recognized.
Yeah. I'd walk past and go, hey, Johnny Thunders. I wouldn't say anything because I don't know the guy.
But he recognized you.
Like, hey, how you doing? So,
that's pretty amazing.
Kind of amazing. So, and we had, people in common, and, East Village is a small place.
Yeah.
So everyone in rock and roll circles, and certainly in those rock and roll circles, you kind of like Jerry Nolan too. He was around, like, Arthur was already in LA, but, and David Johansen, you never saw him anywhere, but, so that's it. So I'd run into him, and we had friends in common, and whatever. So
you kind of knew him from around the neighborhood, kind of hanging around.
Yeah, that's
it.
Thing. And you know what? I think that I always thought that he saw me as maybe a dope patsy, because I knew that him and Jerry Nolan, the drummer of the New York Dolls and Heartbreakers, those guys had played around with people that we knew in New York, and. I remember that I think, like, there was one guy I know who was playing with, I think it was Jerry, and, and he used to supply Jerry dope. Because I don't think Jerry would have played in his band otherwise. Right.
Right.
And I think Thunders, you're a junkie, right? So you're obviously
that's your number one priority.
Well, by necessity.
Yeah.
And so I think he just thought that like maybe I would be somebody who would be so
get him smacked. When you say dope patsy,
I would pay for it.
Right. I got you. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
So just to be clear, a dope patsy would be a person who'd hang around with a rock star and give him drugs.
Yeah.
Something like that. Right?
Yeah, or just I mean, I made up that expression, but just like a
it's a good. It's a good
so that's what I always felt like. So this is why Johnny Thunders is going out of his way to say hello to me. So I don't know, I don't know. I never did dope with him, and I never, certainly never bought him.
But you think he saw you in that?
Put my own arm before his.
This reminds me of Sonny Greenwich in the 90s on the plateau. He would find, because he was sort of a local. Sure. He'd find people who'd buy blow, and and he'd hang out with them all the time. I don't want to name any names, but I can think of a few local journalists that used to hang around with Sonny a lot, who were basically dope patsies, and maybe I was too, because I like Sonny. But,
right.
But
it's sort of a different vibe though, coke and heroin, right? Like the sort of social.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. They're very, very different drugs. They
and coke,
coke, you're drinking,
bathroom,
right?
Lines, In fact, you kind of, you're shooting up. It's I mean, you can do lines too. I guess that's how.
I never shot heroin, but I did smoke it and sniff it. But it was a very different vibe too. That when you'd hang around with people doing it, it wasn't just kind of sitting there nodding off rather than kind of going, yeah, let's get some more and drink more and kind of like, when you're on coke.
I guess it depends on how good the dope was.
Yeah.
Really, Ideally, you're nodding off. You don't have to pay for your company. Or you're not doing that in the shooting gallery where people are bleeding on you, shooting their blood in the syringes their way.
First time I did it actually was in New York in the early 90s, and somehow I was down there and we got some, and I remember sniffing it and smoking it and stuff, and But I didn't really. I sort of dabble. I was one of these dabblers in smack, right?
Well, that's the only way.
I was never addicted to it. Yeah.
No, well, and just as well because that's not a fun.
Yeah. You don't want to be Johnny Thunder, right? That was, as you mentioned, how pathetic it was that he's falling down.
And there, at that moment in that time, and there were all these, of course, everybody, we all love Johnny Thunders. We all love the New York Dolls.
Well, he was a great musician. I mean, he was a fan. Well, I love his music. I love Johnny Thunders.
Yes.
I love his solo stuff. That's just my personal appeal. I think he was a real punk rock icon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my view. But I'm a fanboy. You knew him as a person, so
but like I said, we weren't friends. We weren't friends.
Yeah,
we weren't friends. Okay. Like I didn't have his phone number, didn't call him up, nor would I. Why would I call him up? You know what I mean? Unless I was looking for dope and I thought he had something, and then he would have ripped me off anyway.
Right.
So there was really no.
All right.
It was just someone from the neighborhood.
Okay. So that's that. We're moving towards closing, but I know that Rob, you want
you weren't friends with Thunder, but you were friends with Debby Harry.
Blondie, that's my
Blondie.
next. Yeah,
I still am.
Really? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about her? Because I love her music.
And
again, met her around the same time.
Around the same time, a little earlier.
Okay.
She was a bit older, right? Than the others in the New York scene.
Actually,
right?
You know what? I first met Debby Harry. This is true. When I was 15, at the Plateau Theater or Hall, whatever it's called.
Here in Montreal.
Yeah, they were supporting Iggy Pop. It was March 13th, 1977. That's the day. I don't know how I'm remembering these days, but that one I'm sure of.
Fact checkers out there listening can go and check. When did Blondie play at the Plateau Theater?
I had this conversation with Chris recently. They were saying their first day on that tour was Toronto. I said, no, Chris, it was Montreal. I remember it well. They turned around and said, oh, yeah.
So March 13th. So she was opening for
So their first record, I don't even know if it was out yet or it was coming out very soon. And they had the Iggy tour with the Idiot tour with Bowie on keyboards, and they did their set. And I'd seen a photo of her in Cream magazine maybe that month. And I said,
I can imagine going into the bathroom as a teenage boy with that photo. It's like, Debby Harry was so sexy and beautiful. In Videodrome, and she was just so,
the bone would fucking for that man, for that broad.
And she had this beautiful high voice. I mean, she was sexiness in so many different dimensions.
Yes.
Right?
Well, this is quite an interesting thing, right? So, anyways, that did not matter. She came after, and this is one of the first shows that I'd seen that was not at the Forum, But even the Dolls was a pretty big venue. And this was, there's only about 600 people for that first Iggy show. The Bowie on keyboards. Nobody really cared, Here. So she came out, and because it was a small hall and stuff, I was sitting, maybe 5, 6, 7 rows back. No big deal. It wasn't assigned seats, just like at any gig. And then she came out after an Iggy set and sat down right beside me.
Oh, wow.
Literally right beside me.
Just to watch Iggy.
Yeah, to watch Iggy. I didn't say I was just some kid, with a Lou Reed shirt on or something.
Lucky you, man. Yeah. Debby Harry comes and sits next to you.
She wasn't famous then.
Okay.
They were just.
But she must have been gorgeous.
Oh yeah, she was fucking amazing. I'd already fallen in love with her from premium. So she came and I spoke to her. I said, it was a good set or whatever, whatever type
fan
like
talk.
That.
Right,
She's very sweet, sweet, and but that's it. That was all. But later, so we did a record. We made a record with Chris Stein, who was from Blondie,
right?
And Chris and Debbie were an item. Of course, they were a couple for a long time. And they were still a couple at this point, but they were sort of going on their separate ways, they still played. They still did music together,
but they were separating as a couple.
Yeah, as a couple,
right, okay.
But they were still really close.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And so she would stay there, and I would stay. So we'd all stay at Chris's place. So Chris and Debbie and Chris would sleep in the bedroom upstairs, and I would sleep downstairs in the living room, like on a pull-out bed sort of thing with Andy Warhol's cows at the end of the bed. I'd be kicking it. We might sleep. These fucking things are so uncomfortable. Bang! I kick that Warhol again. You know, I was always asking Chris to look at his photos. One, because he's a really good really good photographer, but I was hoping to see Debbie nude.
Oh, yeah, right.
You know, so, but anyway.
Is this in New York?
This is in New York. They had a place in Chelsea.
Okay.
She eventually moved to University Place, but he was in Chelsea.
Okay. Right.
And they just moved from a big house on 72nd Street because they were broke. And Chris had been very sick, right?
Blondie was broke when she was a big star?
Yeah, they were.
But that was when they had records selling?
Well, this is maybe 86 or so. So, I mean, they stopped making records. I think the last record was 82.
That was about the year she was in Videodrome. That David
around that. So, yeah, it was around that time.
I mean, you think she'd be a huge star. How could she be broken? I don't know if that's just from the outside.
No, well, they weren't good with money. And they had two managers. Like, they had one manager that they'd signed with very early on. They got them on private label, so who was getting 20 or 25% off the gross, and then they ended up they fired him, but they still had to pay him. Okay. So then they ended up with, I think, Shep Gordon, Alice Cooper's manager. Maybe there was somebody in between before that, and paying that person 25%. So right away, 50% off the top is going to manager.
And then there's costs, right?
Sure.
You know, other
that's it. So I mean,
so all the money just goes, and then you're
and they had drug habits too.
Yeah.
So I mean, so they, I just remember that they had way more money than I did. And Chris's slum apartment in Chelsea was still like 2 stories. It was a nice, like a townhouse type thing. Him and William Burroughs. William Burroughs used to come over.
Oh yeah, you met William Burroughs?
I was going to stay with William Burroughs at his place in Lawrence, Kansas. And didn't. I didn't. That's always
Chris, you're blowing my mind here. I mean, when I was 18 and 19, I was reading every book by. I was fanatic over William Burroughs.
No,
I thought he was a genius.
Yeah, I read. Most
yeah, you too. Yeah, he was a punk rocker of his. He was an authentic, kind of disruptive, kind of,
Well, that was the thing that was so neat at staying at their place, right? Because all these people would come over. David Bowie would come over. Iggy Pop would come over if they were in town.
Is he short?
William Burroughs.
Is he short?
Yes.
Yeah, he is. Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not, I wasn't always there, but I'd answer the phone, because I was living there too, right? Well, living there, for extended periods. So, Burroughs would call.
Okay.
So I sort of knew him over the phone. And then we were coming back from
was he really grouchy? I'm just curious. Like, he always seemed very stern.
I can't say that I knew him. I'd met him and spoken to him over the phone a number of occasions. And we were coming back from Los Angeles on a tour, and the tour had gone poorly, and we had no money, and we were literally siphoning gas out of cars to get back home. And actually, our roadie who was doing it had a record for that. Oh. He had a criminal record.
So that's how you do a siphon.
So he's like a serial
expert. Serial siphoner. Yeah.
So
you made it back to New York from Los Angeles.
Well, no, he was living in Kansas, and we were in Kansas,
right? Okay,
and we hadn't had anywhere to sleep, or we were
call William Burroughs at his ranch.
So I knew that. I knew Burroughs was in Kansas. I knew Chris. So I spoke to Chris, or my manager talked to Chris or whatever, and see if Burroughs we could just stay there.
Put you guys up, yeah.
So sure they can. Okay. All right. And then we took a closer look at the map and realized, well, I think we were on Route 66 in Lawrence. We sort of was a little bit north. It was kind of out of the way. And we weren't going there asking him for money. We were just looking for a place to crash. Maybe shower,
Makes me think, did you stop off at the Gonzo Journalist in Colorado? What was that?
And wrong road. That's too far.
Hunter Thompson. Yeah, because you're on a road trip, stop off at Hunter Thompson's place.
No, I don't know how to secure that. But so, anyways, in the end, it didn't make sense. So we didn't go. But also, I was the only guy in that band who even knew William Burroughs was, let alone read him.
Right. Really?
Yeah.
He seems like, God, how could you not know William Burroughs?
Well,
literary icon.
Yeah, well, these are not literary students.
I guess yeah, okay.
So,
right. But you are.
Comparatively, I guess, at the time. At least I read,
So did you make it back to New York?
No, we came back. We were going back to Montreal.
Okay,
we met
Montreal.
But you were asking about Debbie. So I got to know Debbie pretty well because obviously we lived in the same place for, weeks at a time. And Debbie... she's wonderful. Seriously. It's like, I've met a lot of famous people in my time, like, many, many famous people. And, it's a tough, road to hoe, plow to hoe.
Road to hoe, I think it's
whatever the expression is.
Road to hoe, right? It's not road. I know
that. Right.
Yeah.
It's a tough call.
To be famous, you mean?
To be famous, that famous.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she's just the sweetest thing. But, there's one time, we were lying in bed together, and it's just me and Debby Harry. Right? Wow. And Chris had gone out, and there's two of us, and, and the 16-year-old me is going, you got to make a move. And, at that time, I could seduce women,
Yeah. You're young, good looking, and you're in bed with Debby Harry.
We're lying in bed watching TV. But there's a part of me saying,
"Nah, you could ruin it."
Don't do this because that could really work. It could be uncomfortable for her and me too, especially since I'm staying there. But her and Chris were not an item. Right. So but on top of everything, there was zero sexual thing there, and that's what I've always found with Debbie. Debbie is like a big sister, and she's sweet and lovely, and she's generous of spirit. And she's wonderful. I don't say that about too many people. And it's not because she's Debby Harry. I say she's so wonderful, but she really is lovely.
I think if she were,
and Chris is amazing.
I think if she were, I doubt she's going to ever listen to this. But if she were, she'd probably take that as a great compliment. I think, because you can simultaneously say how beautiful and sexy she is, but also how much of a great person.
Well, sexy was not the thing.
No,
sexy maybe then, but when I knew her, there was no sex. Yeah. I don't know if she'd had because of how beautiful she was, she just had to turn that off.
Okay.
Just, I don't know. I really don't know.
On screen, when you see her, she just radiated this.
Yeah. Spectacularly beautiful. And by the time and when I knew her, when I knew her best, she was well into her 40s, and she'd gone, she was not, she wasn't the sex kitten she had been at a spry 33.
I could imagine a 45-year-old Debby Harry would be pretty alluring.
Well, still a beautiful woman, but an older woman, and there's just no sex vibe whatsoever.
Okay.
And I think that's not just me. That's I think anyone would tell you that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that's and I it's not like we're in touch all the time, but I'm still in touch with Chris. Somewhat regularly. We don't talk every day, but we do communicate.
Okay.
And I saw her last time they were here a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
So okay.
So they're back together. Her and Chris Stein, or
no? They were Blondie was playing Oceaga.
Oh, okay, right.
So I just
Okay, so she was back with her band, right?
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else about that you wanted to, Rob?
No, but I would like to jump ahead a bit.
Yeah, well, we're getting near the end here.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Chris. Yeah. So, at some point you realize you're not going to make it musically.
Well, yeah, that was
pretty.
At a certain point, make it. I mean, that's all relative, right? But
you did pretty well.
At a certain point, you decide you're not going to pursue a musical career.
Yeah,
and then you morph into a writer.
Yeah,
you've never written before, no experience writing.
Not really. I mean, I'd written press releases.
How does that happen? Most people spend years and years learning how to write a sentence.
Well,
so how did that happen?
That writing was always something that came fairly easy to me, even though I failed grade 11 English composition.
You got 2 out of 20 for your essay on homosexuals, right? Yeah.
I might have been grade 10.
Grade 10.
No, it was Madame Wanda. She hated me. She really hated me. It was terrible. I remember, I'd read about the Divine Comedy, Dante, and thinking, well, that's something I should read. Just said when I was like 14 or something. See, that's something I should read. I should know that. And so then it was in the library, so I got it.
It's a heavy read for a 14-year-old.
A lot of triplets.
Well, I realized that because it was in the school library. I took it out and I actually went to her and I said, and she'd been a fucking nun on top of everything. So, I said, this is maybe I bit off quite maybe more than I can chew here, but I would like to get through this book because I think it's an important book.
Yeah,
I should read
the Divine Comedy.
Well, yeah,
great work of literature. It's
Yeah.
So did you finish it? Did you?
No. She looked up at me and she said, I remember clearly looked up. Don't waste my time.
This is an English teacher.
Yeah, it's my English teacher. Who failed me? His composition. But I could always write.
So hold on a second. Let me understand. You go to English teacher. You want to read a great work of literature by Dante, one of the greatest writers of all time. One could argue. Yeah. And she tells you, "Don't waste my time."
Yeah, that's right.
That's an awful teacher.
So I wrote.
That's a horrible teacher.
So I did my book report on this dime store novel, "Cult of Killers," which was ridiculous. Ridiculous. But it was an easy read.
So you were all
on Max and
just to get back to what Rob was asking, you were always interested in literature, reading and stuff, right?
Not especially. I mean, because I didn't go to school, right? I mean, I was expelled in grade 11, and what we were taught in school was for there was things that I was good at and things I just didn't care about and was not good at, like biology. I was terrible. Math, I was terrible. But I was pretty good at music.
Reading literature was pretty good. You were a bit better.
Yeah, I cared. I wanted to read. I wanted an education. So I wanted, and the education that was being provided was not.
So English class was not as bad as the other ones for you as a suffering thing, right?
Probably. Well, it depended on the year and the teacher. But I just read anyways. That's what I often did in school. I just had a book underneath my desk and I just read. So. Enough of it. Whatever the fuck you're talking about, I don't care. Now, it might have been up and down with the Rolling Stones, or it might have been the Divine Comedy, or Burroughs. So it was always, writing is something that, that always came fairly easy to me. I like to take the path of least resistance. I was pretty set in my ways by 35. And, I don't present well, I'm not going to get a job. No one's going to hire me. No one's going to hire me.
You don't look that bad.
No, I don't look that bad, but I don't present. People look at me and they go, that guy. I don't think we want him in our
can I just stop you a little bit there? What do you think it is? Because, you look like a
regular
guy. Your hair's long, but who cares? Nobody cares about long hair.
I don't know. I don't even know. I have no idea how people perceive me at this stage of the game.
I would say probably unmanageable.
Unmanageable, yeah. Might be. Yeah. But there's something about you that you couldn't control or something.
There's no jobs that I wanted. What am I going to do? I work A&R in the record company? I don't fucking think so. Be an insurance, a banker, it's like
that came up in the last one, like the idea of going straight to you. You're like, no way, I can't do that.
Well, I don't. I couldn't. I can't. So you have limited options when you can't.
You're done as a musician, and then you get a job at the Mirror.
Yeah.
No, well, that's not really true. So when I came back. I don't know. When I came back from New York, I had nothing to do. I had no money, right? I had nothing. I had no band. I had no education to speak of, no formal education, no training to do anything. So it was like, and so basically the type of work when I had to work was shitty, like really crappy work. Like, I used to work at Manic Panic. I don't know if you know that. Manic Panic.
I remember that.
That was the Blondie connection, Tish and Snooki. They,
what was it?
They sold a lot of stuff like punk clothes, but they had hair dye.
Right.
Yeah, they had a hair dye. So they import hair dye, like blue hair dye and green hair dye before it was common. And they imported from London, I think. And then my job, along with a whole bunch of other rock and roll losers, were for $5 an hour. We'll put stickers on the hair dogs so they wouldn't see where it came from in England, and they'd ship that shit all over the States. And
Okay.
So
you had some odd job. This is the 90s we're talking about?
This is the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in your 30s, you come back, you're like, okay, I got to try and figure out what I'm going to do. I'm no longer in rock and roll. And kind of drifting.
I was still making music, and I think I made some excellent recordings at that time, but they never...
You toured with Boot Sauce at one point.
That was
during that time.
That was 94.
Right. I mean, because I think we talked about that once, that when Boot Sauce went, you guys went.
Yeah, that was the last year.
Shout out to Sonny Greenwich and Boot Sauce, and right?
Yeah, we did.
Friend of mine.
Pillbox, we did Canadian tour with them.
So you're doing some music, but you're kind of winding it down.
Well, I was. Right? This is what I tell you. What I was doing, I had to pay the bills. It was very depressing, and I was cynical as fuck by that point. It's like because things had always come so close for me, and then they went to shit. Yeah. And Pillbox was an excellent band, right? That record was reissued recently, and people love it because it is an excellent record. But bands are bands, and they're fickle, and that's it. So when the band had split up, actually, American, which is Rick Rubin's label, found me in Montreal. Wow. Asked me, said, "Can we see the band? We love your record."
Rick Rubin, man.
Well, not Rick Rubin personally,
but still,
yeah,
that's pretty high up there.
Yeah,
right.
Then A&M
of Beastie Boys, by the way, just for anyone listening, Rick Rubin of the Beastie Boys. But go ahead, and many other things. But I
went to a party with them once.
Okay. So you're kind of you're in a transition here in the 90s. You're doing some music, and you're
and how I was paying the bills, and I've never really spoken about this because I'm kind of ashamed of it, and still I am. Is that okay? What am I gonna? I got I got to make money somehow, right? So I became Jim Morrison of Quebec and Les Doors with Hommage de Doors.
Oh my God! Cover band?
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So this is anyone listening. Wait, really? This is the first time.
What was the name of the group?
Alive, she cried.
Alive, she cried. So just for anyone listening, Chris is
waiting for me outside.
So Chris is admitting something.
You played in Montreal? Alive, she cried?
Well, that was the thing. I was very ashamed of it and embarrassed, and
you shouldn't be.
Well,
being able to sing like Jim Morrison is not easy.
It's just the whole thing. It's like the culture was crap, and these homage bands were contributing to the crap.
Yeah.
And I'd always railed against that, and here I am fucking doing it. And why am I doing it? Because the money was not bad. I get $500.
And you could do it. Not many people can do that.
Well,
that's the other thing that's interesting
I
about
realized
that
too.
My
my thought was we always played the hinterland, Quebec
Laurentians
City,
and
Lac Saint Jean, Victoriaville, Drummondville, every shit town in Quebec we played, and people loved it. Oh, they loved the Doors.
Because I can imagine
I can see you being a very good.
Totally, man.
Well,
you got the hair and the
movements.
Yeah, well, and you have a deep voice. You had a very deep voice, and you're thin.
Yeah, I had to. I had to sing like. I didn't have to, but I mean,
I could imagine drunk French Canadians in bars just loving seeing you on the stage as Jim Morrison. Man.
It was a big hit.
You shouldn't be ashamed of that. I mean, that's actually hard to do.
Well, I mean, I'm so ashamed of it that I'm actually talking about it publicly now.
This is cathartic,
but
right? Maybe.
I never knew that.
Yeah, well, it's not something I ever care to advertise.
Maybe the Mega Blast podcast is the first time that anyone's going to know, except for those French Canadians who were pissed and saw you in Lac Saint Jean.
They know that. We played to 1,000 fucking people with this shitty cover band. I mean, it wasn't a shitty cover band because everybody could play. They were all excellent musicians. I mean, and I would do fucking my shtick and then the chicks would all want to sleep with Jim and it was fucking ridiculous. But it was, it was not.
It must have been fun at least. I mean,
it could be fun. I was always drunk when I did it. I sort of had I was sort of in the spirit of the thing.
Were you ashamed of it at the time?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So absolutely. You were up there going, I don't want to do this.
Our friend Christian saw me do it in Quebec City.
Really? Okay.
Called me on it. I was so embarrassed. Don't tell anybody you saw
Christian
me.
Gravener. Shout out to Christian Gravener. Right? Yeah.
Don't tell anybody you saw me do that. It's like, because I still cared, right? And I still had a good reputation. People still knew who I was. Like, occasionally, we'd do those things. They go, hey, well, aren't you from, 39 Steps or whatever? I know. No.
You would lie. You would actually lie.
Probably.
So, okay. Wow, okay.
I just thought it was lame. But at the same time, I was working on weekends and making $500 a week, so that's better.
Money, right?
That was better than the alternatives.
Right.
And at that point, I was just so like, it was just like, oh, it's fuck. Everyone else sells out. It's like fuck this. Right. It's like, what am I? I can't. And I need to feed myself. So and I don't even want to work. So while I was doing work, I don't want to be somebody's fucking boy.
Right,
I'll never be anyone's boy. So you got to do something. So it's like, even though in that
at least it's music. Right? At least it's
music. That's music. And I listen, I like the Doors. So,
right.
I mean, that's why we did the Doors.
Doors are great.
Right? Like, could have been...
So did you form
Pearl Jam, but...
did you form the cover band? Like, did you set it up?
No,
someone else
did.
Okay.
No. A friend of mine knew that I was in a bad way, and I realized I was vulnerable, and approached me with the idea, and I thought about it long and hard, and I figured...
Cash money. Right.
Well, pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I knew how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I had that skill. I certainly knew how to perform or, be a monkey on the stage. And I didn't mind the Doors. I mean, by the end of that, had like a 2-year run or something. By the end of it, it's like, I never want to hear Riders on the Storm again. Even though I like the song, and the repertoire was mostly from the first
That's
album.
got to be the most boring song. I mean, I love the Doors.
Well, it was good for me because of the big long intro and then the big fucking piano solo, so I would just disappear. That's the thing I like about Light My Fire too, because keep
so
on
long.
playing.
Yeah, it's really long.
I'll just go back and take a break and then drink and do whatever and
come back
and
my
cue. Damn. Whoa. You know that was the untruth. So anyway, so when I was doing that, that's all I was doing. I was like, well, that's not very fulfilling. I was making music on the side. Like I said, I made a full record with stuff which never came out, which it was good material, if I do say so myself. Maybe it'll be released after I die.
Okay. Yeah.
If you can find it on my hard drive.
Posthumously. The great Chris Berry will leave a legacy of music that will be.
I have sent that record out to people that people that really like my other records. That contact me, and if I sort of feel them out, I'll send them a copy of it. And then what are they going to say? Yeah, that sucks. But I mean, I always say that. Like, so while I was doing that, the rest of the Doors were most of them were in school and university, and
the Doors cover band.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Not the actual Doors.
No.
Yeah,
but
okay.
We were, as far as anything was going to go, we were the Doors.
Right. Okay.
Let's play. And
so they're studying, they're doing different things.
They were mostly going to school, and I'd always kind of. I'd kind of like to have had a formal education, I just never was able to. I was always on the road or touring, and my, like I say, I didn't have a high school degree, right? Because, I did in the end have one, but, academically, I had never really excelled. No, that's not really true. I excelled at the things I was good at, and the things I didn't care about, I didn't.
You're clearly intelligent. I mean, it's no question.
Maybe brighter than your average bird. Well, it depends. Crows are really intelligent.
Yeah,
but maybe not as smart as a crow. But
But it's hard to be that smart. Come on,
So it just seemed like something to do. So it's like, okay, well, I'm making money, and so maybe I'll take some courses that interest me. So I took some, history and literature and stuff like that, and then I realized,
at university,
and also, I was getting grants and bursaries and stuff like that. So it's like between the Doors and then getting money, and a scholarship, eventually.
Okay.
So I just, I figured, well, okay, at least if nothing else, I'll pay the bills. And, I'll end up with student debt, which is,
which we talked about earlier, yeah.
But I mean, but at least I'll pay the bills, and, and so my writing developed my ability to write developed in university,
writing essays and that kind of thing.
Right. But I mean, and then I started editing the Rant Line at the Montreal Mirror.
Oh, I remember that. I thought it was Alistair Sutherland.
It was Alistair.
Yeah.
When Alistair became the editor.
Just to be clear, what the Rant Line was, it was there was a vocal box where people would call in. I thought it was the Hour, maybe it was the Mirror.
It was the Mirror.
It was the Mirror, and people would call over throughout the week because it was that. Magazine newspaper was once a week. People would call and leave these crazy messages, and Alistair Sutherland and I guess you would, sort of put them together and curate them into this thing. I remember I used to read it. Yeah. It was great. These crazy kind of people.
Yeah. There were some really good ones. And they were really good ones. And Alistair was took that Rant Line. So there's a science to the Rant Line. You can't fuck it up. But
what was it? What was the science?
Well, the science was never to embellish.
Just take what they, because it was always quotes. I mean, it was this person called in. Blah, blah,
but when it got boring, I would create.
Oh yeah.
I never told Alistair. God forbid Alistair. I would have been fired.
He was a real purist. I used to know Alistair pretty well.
Yeah. So and the Rant Line, he was crazy protective about it. He had a trademark. And he stole it from our friend Michael Maddox anyways, who had a magazine that I did write for in New York called Street Sound.
So that's how you got in at the Mirror, was
I started editing the Rant Line.
Okay.
And then I wrote a story about Randy Byro, who I mentioned earlier, the Coke guy Rowdy, who ended up with Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, and his stories.
And that was published. And that they published.
Yeah, I wrote a story on him. Yeah, because he was in prison at the time, and it's he had quite an interesting experience, right? So he was in prison then.
Wow. Okay.
Anyways, whatever. But he obviously got fucked up with everyone else in that Seattle scene.
Okay.
Nirvana,
so this is the '90s grunge scene. We're talking about Nirvana, this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
So Seattle, Washington, where all those bands, at least Nirvana and some of the others. Yeah. So you had some contacts, and you wrote an article about
Randy, who was our roadie, who had gone on who'd moved to. He went to Seattle with Voivod, and then he stayed there. And he had been sort of chased out of town anyways because he was a coke addict. And
Voivod,
he was a coke addict, then they moved over.
The great French Canadian band, Voivod.
Yes.
They were great.
Yeah. Well, Randy was our roadie forever. Okay. He was our guy, and then he started working with other bands like Voivod, and then he became Alice in Chains' guy. So they were managers. Right. They had the same manager as Soundgarden, so he's always on the road with them. And he did very well. They was paying him a lot of money. He was a member of the band. The way your head roadie guy kind of is part of the band.
Right.
So he was, what he was for us, he became for them. Only they were successful. So he was driving a Mercedes and had a house in Burbank.
So you wrote this article,
but his drug habit took over. And he ended up,
So you wrote this article, you had it published, and this was, I guess, your first major piece that was.
I'd written for this magazine in New York called Street Sound. It was mostly about dance and EDM. Well, that was pre-EDM, but dance and DJs and shit like that. It was that culture, rap, I guess, to hip hop, to a point. So I don't know. I just wrote.
So you had some experience.
I could always write. I could always write. Yeah. In fact, I saw a press release that I wrote in 1983 or something. I go, that's pretty good.
I used to write for the Link at Concordia when I was there. I did it because I could get free show tickets, and I'd go see shows, and I'd write a stupid thing. I get free music. I was like, I didn't really care about the writing.
For me, it was just something I could do. It was I didn't have to change who I was. Alistair was a fantastic editor. I could be as rude or say pretty well anything I want, and if I was pushing it too hard, which I can do, Alistair would say, "No, you can't talk about ebony twink action in this context." So it's like if Alistair said that, I knew it was true. And so I would go, okay, thank you. You cover my ass on it.
Alistair was a very successful publisher. He had MTL Magazine for a long time.
Yeah, he was an editor.
No, and he's just one of these guys who, like Christian Gravener, who's been in and out of the media business for the last 40 years in Montreal.
Oh, yeah. Alistair was a fantastic editor, and I learned a
good guy. I used to drink with him. I used to hang out with him and Sonny and stuff, and I knew him, and
drinking with him would be the activity.
Yeah.
No, Alistair was great. So I mean, so basically, then I wrote a column and had a weekly column that I did for, I don't know, 12 or 13 years or something. So it was not a bad thing. It was like, I didn't have to work too hard. And sometimes I could write stories that, that I could use my own voice. I wrote my own voice a lot then. And so I could make jokes and I could have fun. And then there's this media feedback every Thursday and this stuff comes out.
So this is how it happened. You ended up with a column and
so then I just wrote for them, and then I started writing for Saturday Night Magazine and
I'm amazed at
other places.
I must have read your stuff because I used to pick up the Mirror every week. I'm sure I used to leaf through and read the rant line. I must have read your column. What was the name of your column?
That column was the one up front called People. Remember? It was sort of like I took various characters from around town, and I would, do it was sort of based on doers' Scotch profiles.
Sort of small interviews.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I'd fuck with people, like I'd interview somebody who packed fudge in Drummondville or something, and they'd back a joke, and that kind of thing, But I spoke to a lot of interesting people, from specialized prostitutes to surgeons, to plastic surgeons, everybody. I had to think of somebody to interview every week. And I had to make it funny, and I had to be interesting. So some weeks were obviously better than others, but some of those columns were really good. And then I was writing feature stories and cover stories and stuff. Those paid better, and I could have and celebrity interviews and stuff like that. I'd interview Patti Smith or whoever it was coming around. Yeah.
So it was a range of from unknown people who just were interesting up to.
No. Like someone like Patti Smith wouldn't be in my column. My column was all local.
Okay.
It was all local people. Okay. Some, the guy that drove the one. I remember a good one was the guy who drove the train in Cavendish Mall, the little children.
Oh yeah.
They wear the hat and stuff, and because you get pathos from these people, well, this I am living my dream or whatever, not that, but stuff that was kind of funny when you take it out and put it into the column.
You think being Jim Morrison is hitting rock bottom? Try being that guy. Like, this is my dream, is to drive the train in Cavendish.
Well, I don't think that's what it was, but he's people like the guy, the guy that cleans out shit from porta potty. His job is cleaning out shit. But sometimes I got to get really in there with my axe, and I got to pick up the shit when it's frozen and put it in, and then I can get my hose in there and suck up this shit, and it stinks. And I walk by and I watch people. It makes me laugh. I go driving up the street. I see people, whoa, holding their noses. Oh boy, I have fun.
I love this.
I have this fun.
I love this because you're clearly imitating. It's a French Canadian, right?
That guy.
Yeah, that guy. Like the way you're doing it is great.
But so
that was fun.
People that run rehabs with ridiculous methods and stuff like that. Okay.
So by this time, after doing that for 10 or 12 years, you had really become a writer, and you made the transition. How it happened.
I started writing basically once. Professionally, I started writing. I guess in '99 or something. I'd done some professional writing, like here and there. I wrote for articles for Graffiti, which is a Canadian, just here and there when in the '80s and at times, but I didn't really. Turn around and say, well, what do you do?
And you wrote for travel.
Travel. I wrote the Fedora's travel guide. Montreal. And a couple other things. And I wrote for the Burlington 7 Days.
So what is it in your writing that recommended you as a writer of pornography for cinema?
Oh, well, when I started doing porn, not as an actor, as I swing my big fucking dick around.
Who approached you? Was it a producer or an actress?
Well, I'm sorry?
Who initiated contact?
Producer, yeah.
Not an actress.
Well, basically, it was this company, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I was very proud of it at the time. I loved when people say, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I'm a pornographer. Because I love that. So, Mom, tell people what they're asking what I'm doing. Tell them what your son is. No, he's a pornographer. And they'll laugh.
How did that connection happen?
The individual who had managed one of my bands had been hired by this company in Los Angeles. I think it was called Danny's Hard Drive, Danny with an I. And it might have there might have been more to it. I forget, but they had like a fucking multi-million-dollar monthly business putting together porn, and the porn, and like they basically had the local sluts, and they'd turn around and they'd film them, and and they would give them stories, right? Like they're like, I even remember Aria Giovanni, and I even remember they were porn stars, like well-known porn stars.
I'm sure I've seen some of them.
Okay, I
just
that porn was always too conventional for my own peccadillos.
I got bad news about the coffee, Chris. We got no more coffee, so we're gonna have to wrap this up soon.
Okay, I'll survive. But so basically they didn't feel that their scripts were very good. And so
What's a good porn script? I mean,
it's actually there's more to it than you think, because it's like you don't script. Okay, you go ooh, and then you go oh.
Right.
It's basically.
But the intro when they
you need to set it up, right?
Yeah.
If there's going to be any eroticism to it, that's the setup.
The pizza guy arriving at the door, knocking on the door.
It. And that's
hello, man. Would you like me to bring the pizza inside?
That's it, and that's the kind of scripts that they were getting.
Yeah. How do you like your peppers?
Yeah. How do you like the sausage? Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they brought me. They brought me in to sort of up the quality of the script, and and make them funny, and it was kind of a dull. It was it was not my taste in erotica, if you want to call it that. It was all like sort of like big tits. It was all about big tits. Yeah. And like, hey, look, I got big tits and I'm jumping on a trampoline kind of thing.
Right.
Or like, I mean, I can appreciate it.
You're more of a BDSM kind of guy, right?
Like, well, my tastes are a little more exotic.
Yeah.
But, as long as there's a child involved. But so basically they brought me in, and then so I wrote scripts that were kind of funny, right? That was because that was sort of their tone, but that were actually kind of funny, and most of it was at the expense of the actresses. So I would give them real lines, and they would get mad at that. And so the actresses or the talent would be mad. It's like, and they flew me out there to Los Angeles to the studio because they're filming these things, fucking 24/7, right? And
why were they angry? They were
they're mad. Well, this is it. They were like, I remember talking to one of the actresses, and she's saying, look, if you want to write something where they piss on me, that's fine. But don't ask me to learn a paragraph of dialogue.
So they just want to get in front of the screen, open their legs. And,
it's just too much. That's not what I do. Okay. What I do is
their job is to suck the dick and have the cum on the boobs.
That's it. Don't ask me to.
But actually memorizing words.
Well, they even had a problem.
Well, I mean, look, it's no accident. I mean, they're good at that. They're good at fucking. Like that's what they're good at, right?
Yeah.
They're not good at memorizing lines. I mean, right?
Who isn't good at fucking?
Well, yeah.
It's a connection between two people.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
It's like, but like great leg. Well, I guess so with you.
I totally agree with that. But there's also something about like pornography too. I mean, it's a way of fucking. I mean, there's like you have to show. Yeah. There's this whole thing that they're doing that most people fucking are just fucking. I mean, they're having. Yeah. Might be great. Might be hot.
This wasn't my part. It was more like softcore, really. I mean, it was really the whole thing was like and they would a lot of what I was doing was repackaging their old content, putting new content to it to string it all together, like sexy and string it all together, and then they would put this out on DVD, and that's a whole other market, and they made a ton of fucking money, and they paid me a lot of money to do it.
Porn is huge.
It was, it was a sweet gig. It was a sweet gig. They flew me out there, put me up at the Beverly Hills Lows. It was a sweet gig, and they paid me well. And I can remember going out with friends in LA. Who are in the music business and TV, famous.
What are you doing now?
Hollywood fucking famous thing, and people don't really want to talk to you unless they think you can do something for them, right? It's like, or unless you're, unless they recognize you, or or you're in a position to do something for them, important person in the industry or whatever, and that's just what it is. It's gross, but
that's
whatever.
Hollywood,
that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when in Rome. So so people try to figure out what's this guy? Who's he? Looks like a musician, but So I'm here because I work in pornography.
Actually,
I write porn. Oh yeah. I'm a pornographer. It made me laugh. Made me laugh to say it. And all of a sudden, everyone's gathering around. Do tell.
Yeah, right. Just like we're doing. We want to hear the story.
Well, that's it. It's like, and I have lots of stories to tell. So, but I mean, it wasn't, there was just, these actresses and people, these talking people. They just thought this was wonderful. And people that knew me already knew me.
Right.
Well, that's just perfect.
Are those,
for about a year.
Porno actresses, are they really as ditzy as we think they might be?
Well, I only know so many of them.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if any of them are like interesting people when you're talking to them.
I'm sure there are. My relationship with any of those actresses, they call them that, was professional.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't hanging out with them.
Okay.
I had no desire to hang out with them. No desire to fuck or anything like that. Just whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, so
it's a job. Right?
But I mean, they were not my experience. They were not the best and the brightest necessarily. Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure there were plenty of lovely women that worked or men that worked in that media, but.
There are more women, as I understand the pornography business. They need more turnover of women because people want to see new ones. The guys have longer careers, like the Ron Jeremys or whatever. Right? They kind of
I spent time with Ron Jeremy.
Who's watching porn? It's guys. And
you wrote about him.
I wrote about him.
Okay.
I know Ron Jeremy.
I heard he had some sort of sexual.
I think he's in prison, isn't he? Didn't he like some assault thing?
Something with him.
He was a charming conversationalist.
Really? Yeah. Really? Yeah. He seems. He was a school teacher when he started out as a young man.
If I remember correctly, and I might not, I think he said that he was maybe a drama teacher.
Something.
It was something to do with, he was a serious actor at one point.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I mean, I haven't thought about this in 20 years, but
he's probably one of the most famous porno stars, male ones at least, along with John Holmes, the other one, right?
So my experience in the porn industry was brief. Like I say, it lasted about a year, but it was
why was it brief? You quit, or they?
I think they didn't need me anymore. Okay. I can't remember. I was sad to see it go.
Right. Good money and fun times.
Yeah. Oh, you know what had happened? I was brought in there because my ex-manager had been called in to develop the company as a consultant on how they could make more money and how to do this and that and selling moving DVDs and all this kind of stuff. And they all determined they need better scripts if they're going to sell this shit. So they hired me, and then so he worked. I think he worked with them for a year, and I guess I came with him. That's what happened. Right. So whenever his contract expired, mine did too.
Okay.
And then that was it. And it was it was great. It was great. I don't know if I'd want to do that the rest of my life.
Well, that's it. It sounds like something you might kind of do for a while and then just want to move on, just because.
Yeah. I didn't have that.
It's sort of interesting, and then okay. All right. Listen. I it's like we've already been going on for an hour and 40 minutes, and it's so interesting. I hope we can do it again.
I always like to yak about myself. Yeah. It's my favorite subject,
Yeah. But one thing
I always edit the boring stuff out.
No, man. Keep all the boring bits in. There's nothing boring, man. Honestly, it's not. But I wanted to tell you that after the last episode, just getting back to this posterity and pillbox, I had a guy email me from Australia who sent me this podcast. His name, it was Rat Boy. Mm-hmm. Do you know this?
Sure, Rat Boy played with me in Pillbox.
And he was like, I love Chris Berry. And then I listened to it and I read through it, and they talked about you in this podcast. I don't know if you listened to it. They said Chris Berry, they said, this was a Japanese guitarist who was talking about his career as a guitarist. And then when you came up, they said being a lead singer is a lot of crappy lead singers, but Chris Berry was a really good lead singer. He was one of the better ones.
Yeah, and I can tell these guys agree with
serious.
That.
Yes. No, but I mean, just to speak to your impact, you were good
as I think I told you before, it's like, people still come out of the woodwork and because I'm not that hard to reach, or I guess no one's really that hard to reach anymore. And I see the record, where people are listening to the music. I get the statements, and and I don't know why people in Russia are listening to like whatever record.
You can hold your head up high that even if you never became as famous as the Stooges or something. You did it really well.
Never as good as
right. Okay, that's maybe a bad comparison.
That's like the greatest,
right?
ever.
But I mean, you could take any other band that got bigger than you that maybe good, right? Sure. You know what I mean? You could say I was as good as them, and you could actually be telling the truth.
Better,
exactly.
My shittiest band was better than What Soul and the fucking hair metal and stuff like that. The shittiest thing I ever did. The Doors were better than that.
But don't you think you can hold your head up high and say I was good at that?
Yeah, sure. I don't think everything I ever fucking recorded is brilliant, but a lot of it is.
Yeah. All right.
It's like it was where I was at the time. I'm doing threatening to do music again. Actually,
that's a good place to close. So just let's close it up. You're reforming the 222.
No, enough of those guys.
All right. Yeah. So what's going on? But just to. Rob told me that you're getting the band back together.
No,
this is like the Blues Brothers.
No.
So what are you doing?
There's just a handful of musicians that are all excellent musicians that have been, were asking me to, if I'd be interested in doing music. So I said okay.
Okay.
So it's really.
Can you name some of the people and talk about where you're going to be playing?
It's very casual. It's really just for the love of making music.
All right.
It's like listen, if we write anything, or I write, or we write anything that's decent, we'll record it and make it available to the world. But
so you're not getting the band back together. You're forming a new band.
Yeah, and we're not going to do gigs for lowly gear. I mean, maybe and nobody's going to want us anyways. But if they did, okay, we'd do festivals. Well, I mean, we're not going to do the club circuit. Let's put it that way.
No, but I could imagine one of the festivals. Maybe.
Yeah, so maybe then we'd play or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I still don't even. I just started writing for the music for the first time in 10 years. Just the other day, in anticipation, I was like, okay. I don't even know what it's going to be. It may not be a rock and roll thing. Like, right now the instrumentation is a piano, violin, a bass and drums.
Wow. Okay.
And
violin.
me on guitar. Yeah.
All right.
And me on guitar if we need a guitar. Maybe we won't even this one.
And this is going to be sort of punk-ish or rock.
I don't know what it's going to be.
Okay.
I don't know. I just got to feel like these musicians, and it'll be whatever it is. But I don't think it'll be like everything. Oh man, I don't know.
Before.
Listen, if other directions don't work out well, then I mean, look, I can write fucking these songs like all my old records like in 20 seconds. It's like, so we could do that again, but
you don't want to. You want to move forward, right?
Well, yeah, that's it. And
you want to do something new.
Also, rock and roll to me is like sex is a big fucking part of it. It's like that's a beat, the stance, everything that it's all about sex. And it's like that's not so good from a 62-year-old man. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, it's
so
like.
Do something different.
Well, I mean, my taste, I grew up listening to Leonard Cohen and Joan Baez as much as I listened to the Beatles and the Kinks and the Stones, and I like Nico as much as I like the Velvet Underground, like the Marble Index and those records, Chelsea Girls, of course. So it's, I mean, there's many different. I like folk music.
You're gonna let it evolve.
Phil Oakes, listen to Phil Oakes,
right?
I mean,
So you're just gonna kind of start writing it, start playing with them, and see where it.
I may not even write it. I don't know. See, I've told everyone, bring in if you got some ideas.
Maybe the next time you come
I'll
back.
I'll write the words, obviously, because unless somebody else can write good words. But I don't even know what I'm going to write about. It's like, what I'm going to write about, like, getting high and
this is the
watching Family Guy at 9 o'clock on Adult Swim.
This is the authentic Chris Berry. I'm just going to dive into this thing, and I'm going to do it, and I'm just going to see where it goes.
Yeah,
right?
That's all. And maybe it'll go nowhere, but but I have to say that it is appealing because I always forget when I haven't done music for a while, and then I do. I always forget how cathartic it is and just how kind of important it is to me.
Totally.
But I just yeah. So when I do it, I realize, oh yeah, right. I know this.
All right, Rob. I cut you off there? Did you?
No, not at all. No,
Okay.
no.
All right. Well, listen. I hope we can do this again because this is it's so much fun.
Well, I'm always happy to talk about myself, as you know.
Yeah.
As I said, I'll repeat it.
I mean, we've got to wrap it up, but maybe next time we meet, maybe it'll be more formed, and you'll be able to talk more about.
I can yak shit for fucking ever. Like a lot, right. I mean, and as we talk, I always remember other things.
Okay.
Like there's always stories.
Well, thanks again, Chris.
Well, it's my pleasure, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thank you for listening to today's guest on the Mega Blast podcast. I've been your host, Jason McDonald. This podcast is brought to you by Arts and Opinion, an online journal, which is also available in the Permanent Archives of Canada. Visit us online at artsandopinion.com.